The Rossland Historical Museum Association interviewing John Allen McLeod, November the 19th, 1955. Now, Johnny, when did you first come to Rossland?
October 1902,
Johnny,
Prince Edward Island.
tell us all about it. Which way did you come?
CPR, all the way through.
And did you decide that you should come to Rossland direct, or did you make up your mind while you were traveling?
It was more direct.
What job did you have when you first got to Rossland?
The first job I had when I arrived in Rossland was working at the Velvet Mine for 3 months.
What type of work?
General roustabout, surface work.
And when did you form your connection with the city?
July the 1st,
What type of work?
assessor.
And then you went on to what?
On March the 1st, 1912, I was appointed City Clerk and Collector in addition to being assessor.
Where was the City Hall?
City Hall was at the corner of Earl Street and Columbia Avenue.
When did the City Hall move to its present location, Johnny?
Early in March 1912.
And what were you doing in those days then?
Well, I was with the city then.
As assessor?
When we moved up to the present location of the City Hall, it was a week shortly after my appointment to the City Clerk, Collector and Treasurer.
Johnny, were you married when you first came to Rossland?
No, I was not.
When did you get married then?
September the 20th, 1911.
What family have you, Johnny?
I have 4. 3 boys and 1 girl.
What locations have you lived at in Rossland, Johnny?
With the exception of the first 5 or 6 months, I've lived continuously at my present address, 2144 Leroy Avenue.
Well, Johnny, tell us when you first came here.
About the turn of the century, it was reputed that Rossland had a population of about 10,000 people. Now, where these people lived has always been a mystery to me, for you didn't have as many houses in Rossland then as you have today. But there was an awful lot of tenement houses, hotels, cabins scattered all over the country, so that the report of 10,000 people may have been approximately correct. Since then, it has had its ups and downs. During my time with the city, for a few years previous to that, we had some 40-odd liquor outlets in the city, hotels, saloons, and wholesale premises. These dwindled from time to time until Prohibition came in early in 1917. During 1917, if my memory serves me right.
Johnny, do you recall any of the old so-called saloons or music houses or whatever they had in those days?
I do. The famous International was in operation when I came to Rossland. The Palace Hotel, it is a saloon. The Collins House, now owned by Wise, was also a saloon and variety house. The International Hotel was possibly one of the famous outlets in the West, between a bar, wholesale liquor at the back, at the side, and a variety show at the back. It was known all over the world. It, of course, did not last long.
Yes, tell us just about where it was, and if you have any other little stories about the hotel.
The International Hotel was situated where the curling rink is now on Spokane Street. The Pacific Hotel was down close where Alba's Garage is now. The famous Clarendon was in the middle of the block between the bank and the post office. The famous Allen Hotel is still in its present location. many others have been tore down and removed.
Yes, how about the old Hoffman House? They said that they used to have a real good dining room in there at one time, Johnny.
The old Hoffman House is where Wise's hardware store is now, and the dining room was where the Mueller block is, that is just north of Wise's hardware store. It was operated in the early days by the late Harry McIntosh, later on by Green and Smith, and finally passed out of existence.
I understood you had a little story about the International.
About the International, nothing in particular that I can recollect at the moment.
Johnny, I think you mentioned something about a spectacular gambling table on the upper floors. Could you tell us how they operated it and how they paid off their debts and so forth?
On the upstairs, you went up a ramp, as I recollect it, and there was a gambling den up there, and I believe, from my recollection, that you could indulge in any gambling device with cards or roulette wheels or any such devices that was known at the time. I recollect a roulette wheel there, great big man with a long black mustache, which was the custom of the day, operating it, and all bets, he had lots of money in front of him, and all bets were paid in either silver dollars or $20 gold pieces. He had a stack of them in front of him.
Were there any other places like that in Rossland that had gambling setups?
There was mostly all places in them days had a common gambling place, but not as elaborate as the International.
Was this recognized by the city authorities, or was it all hush-hush and black market?
As far as I know, it had the sanction of the city council of the day, the provincial government, and all concerned. Gambling was permitted all over the West in them days.
Johnny, you mentioned that the International had a show or a variety show. Would you tell us something about that and what else they used to have in Rossland along that line?
Well, as I've previously stated, the International had a variety show at the back. It was running, I believe, 7 days a week, including Sunday. But I never took in any other shows.
How about an opera house that they say they had here at one time?
Yes, they had quite a famous opera house here in them days, and it was right across the alley, down the gully there, right back of Prosser's Press and Store. It was known all over the West, too, and as far as I can recollect, there were shows there at least 3 or 4 times a week.
What else did they use the opera house for?
I can't recollect that it was ever used for anything else but pure show house.
Well, somebody says that they used to have boxing matches here in the old days.
Yes, I believe you are right. There was some boxing matches there. I recollect one that I think I paid $1 to see, and we never saw the fight for one of the would-be boxers. He must have thought his opponent was too tough looking for him, and about the time the bell was to ring for the bout, he slipped through the ropes, left town, and as far as I can remember, he never returned back to Rossland.
Well, Johnny, we were discussing the other day about the early cemeteries in Rossland. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about it?
I believe, in addition to the present city cemetery down in Happy Valley, as they call it, there were several bodies buried in a small cemetery at the time, approximately in 4th Avenue and Monte Cristo Street. I believe there was a very few there, and whether the bodies were removed or not after the city cemetery was started, I have no recollection. There was another cemetery up north of 5th Avenue alongside the railroad track on the east side. There was a number of burials there, and quite a number of them, several, possibly 100, were subsequently removed to the present city cemetery. That one was known as Laurel Hill Cemetery. Quite a number of, as I said before, the bodies were removed to the city cemetery after it had been established. I believe, however, that there were some bodies that have never been removed, the names which are unknown. The present cemetery was started, city cemetery, shortly after the city was incorporated. A record has been kept of all burials and those removed from Laurel Hill Cemetery. The Catholic cemetery was started possibly earlier than that, and the only records available for the burials in that cemetery are through the Catholic Church, where the city had no control over it.
Johnny, I understand that you can tell us about some of the banks that were in Rossland in the early days. Would you care to just describe them for us and tell them where they were?
The Bank of Montreal was here when I came in its present location. The Bank of British North America was adjoining the Bank of Montreal, where Mrs. Buterack's jewelry store is now. The Royal Bank of Canada, which I believe formerly was the Bank of Halifax, was in the opposite corner where Eaton's store is now. They had a small wooden structure of a building there, and when the present Eaton store building was built, the bank premises, which were not very large, were moved to the corner of 2nd Avenue and Queen Street, and now used as a grocery and butcher shop. The Bank of Toronto was in the stone block. Now, whether they own the building or not, I do not know. Now, I have no recollection of any other banks. It's reported that the Bank of Commerce was in here, but I have no recollection of it.
Johnny, I understand that there was a big explosion in the Center Star mine thaw shed in December the 16th, 1905. Could you give us a few of the impressions that you had at that time?
The explosion, I correct you, was at the War Eagle Powder House, which was located some distance east of the War Eagle Hotel, which was in existence at the time. And ex-chief of police from the city, John Ingram, was looking after the powder house, and he was instantly killed. It was on a Saturday afternoon, and it was quite a pitiful sight around town that afternoon. The reaction from the explosion broke a great number of plate glass as well as ordinary windows throughout the city. Both schools at the time, the Central School up on 4th Avenue and St. Paul Street, and the old Cook Avenue School, there was hardly a window left in either school. The same is true of many of the premises and houses around town.
Johnny, you had just mentioned something about the War Eagle Hotel that was damaged in the explosion. Could you tell us some more about this hotel?
It was a company hotel. It was operated by one Sam Tompkins. Most of the people stopping at the hotel were workmen at the Center Star and War Eagle mines. There was a report shortly after the turn of the century, particularly after the strike, that in order to get employment at these two mines, you almost were compelled to stop at the hotel. It went out of existence, I believe, shortly after the explosion, as it was very badly damaged.
Johnny, I understand there was a community up near the War Eagle that was called Fishtown. Can you describe this community to us?
The community in question was on quite a flat spot east of the powder magazine that was blown up. And it was called Fishtown. I believe there was possibly 20 or 25 families lived in the Fishtown, and I believe it got its name from the fact that nearly all, or possibly all, of the families that were living in the Fishtown were originally from Newfoundland. Quite a few of the names I remembered quite well, but I couldn't remember all the names at this time.
Johnny, I wonder if you could tell us something about the fire department in the days when you first came here.
When I came here, the fire department was located in its present premises, corner of First Avenue and Queen Street. I believe they had 3 pieces of apparatus at the time and 3 team of horses, possibly 8 or 10 men on the department. That went on for many years. Finally came down to 1 team of horses, and the first piece of mechanized apparatus they had was an old Austin touring car that was converted into a piece of fire apparatus. That has subsequently been replaced so that at the present time they have 2 pieces of up-to-date apparatus. Motor.
I understand that they also had some fire reels about town. Would you care to describe those?
There seemed to be, for a number of years, quite a few fire reels with hose on. There was one here at the corner of Columbia Avenue and Washington Street where the bandstand was. I have a recollection of one being down on 4th Avenue and one being over in the Nickel Plate. If there were any more, I can't remember. Quite a game of sports in the early days, and for many years after I came here, would be firemen's reel races. I believe there was teams came in from outside towns, as well as the local fire brigade, and the fire teams from the Centre Star and Leroy Mines. There are possibly other people in town. Particularly Roy Stevens. He was very active in connection with firemen's races and one thing or another, and he possibly could give more fully information about the doings than I can.
Johnny, I wonder if you could tell us a few words about the Great Northern Railroad, where the station and trackage was located in town, and if possible, when it was taken out.
The Great Northern Depot was located where the provincial government public works is now located, north of 3rd Avenue between Spokane and Washington Streets. I believe they pulled out of Rossland in the early 20s. Now they also owned that strip of ground around north of where the present high school is and now used by the ballpark. That was subsequently bought by the city from the Great Northern. And fixing up of the ballpark was done by volunteer labor. The original ballpark, which was quite an attraction, was out on the highway where the gravel pit is at the present time. There was quite a field up there, and they had it all fenced in, and there was some mighty good ball games played there, and some very, very exciting lacrosse games. They were also abounded.
Johnny, I wonder if you could give us some of your impressions of the 3 disastrous fires that struck Rossland.
There was a fire on August 25th, 1902. That was just before I came to Rossland, around the corner of Spokane Street and First Avenue. Destroyed quite a few homes and business premises on both sides of Spokane Street. There was a major fire in January the 21st, 1927, on the south side of Columbia Avenue between Washington and Queen Streets, which destroyed quite a few business premises. The most disastrous fire was on March the 1st, 1929, which destroyed the entire block between the Bank of Montreal and the post office. The bank was undamaged except for smoke, and the post office was partially damaged. And it 3-story building, and after it was repaired, it was reduced to a 2-story building and a flat roof. Now that burnt, as I said, between the bank in the Montreal and the post office, and then it jumped across the street and destroyed what was left on the south side in the opposite block from the bank. Went around the corner and destroyed the old famous Rossland Club, which was noted for its hospitality particularly throughout the West and to many distant lands. Many notable characters had availed themselves of the hospitality of the club. I believe that Professor Sage of the University of British Columbia, in addressing a group of Trail and Rossland citizens in Trail last evening, referred to a dime or a piece of money that was embedded in the bar of the old Rossland Club, and which appeared to be a great attraction for people trying to get away with it, but none were successful. It's possible that it was destroyed in the fire that destroyed the building. Another noted hotel with possibly the most elaborate fixtures in the West at the time was, I believe, the Bank Hotel. And I believe it is located where the Rossland Minor building, in the Rossland Minor building. After it went out of existence, I believe some worthy character with lots of money came in here from Butte, Montana, and bought all the fixtures and the glass in the premises. It is in the form of a horseshoe, made with mirrors on both sides, as well as the center of the bar. It was quite an outstanding piece of furniture, or fixtures, as you might call them. As I said before, unequaled by anything in the West. I believe there was also some coins embedded in that bar, which no doubt many customers tried to get away with, but were unsuccessful.
Johnny, could you tell us something about the winter carnivals that used to be held here?
I understand that the first winter carnival held in Rossland was held in February 1898, and was a yearly occurrence until 19, possibly 16, 17, or 18. Carnival was an annual event, snowshoeing, skiing, hockey, tobogganing, and various other attractions that I cannot recollect of. It drew people from all over the country. We had hockey teams would be coming in from Greenwood, Phoenix, Nelson, and surrounding districts, possibly some from the United States. It was an event that was looked forward to from one year to the other. It drew quite a lot of people to the city.
How long would the carnival last, Johnny?
The carnival would last possibly the best part of a week. There'd be events, a regular program made up for each day. And hockey games, usually in the afternoons and evenings, and sometimes in the morning, depending on how many competitive teams would be coming in. Curling would also be underway, but the main curling events would be the annual curling events of the Bondsfield for the district. But there would be curling during each Bondsfield.
Could you describe the toboggan slide that was used?
The toboggan slide was made and used from Columbia Avenue south down the hill, and you landed up, if you were fortunate enough to stay in your toboggan, you'd land up around Union Avenue. You went down the hill with such a speed that it made the grade going up onto Union Avenue. Many spills would, of course, take place, but no serious injuries that I recollect of.
Do you remember any of the leading lights in the carnivals, Johnny?
Well, there was Mr. Gelnus, who was the famous skier, and I believe there was a trophy offered by him, which is still in existence. Several influential citizens around town took an active part in the carnival. One that is living at the present time in Grand Forks was quite active in snowshoeing. I believe he won a snowshoe race one time. Joe Coleman, the tailor. He's passed out of the picture more or less in Rossland, now living in Grand Forks. I don't know how old he is. I don't think anybody does, and I don't think he tells anybody. But I would say that he's between 80 and 90, possibly closer to the latter date.
Could you tell us who sponsored these carnivals, Johnny?
The carnivals were sponsored by a bunch of citizens called the Carnival Association, which comprised various businessmen, possibly hotel proprietors, and people in general. It had the support of the city council, of course, but not financially. One noted character among them, two I might mention that I can recollect of. One is Dan Thomas, and the other was Mr. Lafferty, one-time manager of the Bank of Montreal. He was quite active in these carnivals. Many others, of course, too. Dan Thomas was a ran a wholesale liquor store in Rossland, and he was quite an enthusiastic sport fan. He left here about 1917 or 18, lived in California until he died a very few years ago.
Johnny, would you give us your impressions of the flu epidemic in October 1918?
The flu epidemic, the latter part of 1918, was very, very serious. There was quite a large number of deaths followed. Young children left parentless. It was quite a strenuous period here. The local hospital was unable to take care of all the patients, and the Allen Hotel was turned into a temporary hospital, and nurses were provided. I believe there was 2 or 3 possibly outstanding nurses came in from Nelson. It was carried on during the more serious stages of the epidemic. The hotel was reimbursed for rent, etc., and all the carpets in the building, particularly those rooms that had been used for patients, were taken up and sent to Nelson to a steam laundry where they were cleaned, brought back, and replaced. Some considerable rent was paid the owners of the hotel at the time, and all the expense for opening up the hotel for temporary hospital was paid by the city, of course, who were responsible, and the amount expended was subsequently reimbursed to the city by the provincial government.